10:30 a.m. Sevastopol Harbor, Crimea. The blast doesn't ask for permission. It arrives first, loud and humiliating, ripping through the port as a column of fire punches skyward, turning the Ropucha-class landing ship Novokirkatsk into a floating obituary written in smoke and shrapnel. Ammunition cooks off in sequence. Deck plates peel back like cheap aluminum, and the Black Sea Fleet loses another unsinkable asset in broad daylight. Here's the irony. While this ship is disintegrating frame by frame, Russian diplomats are smiling in air-conditioned rooms in Abu Dhabi, talking about de-escalation, stability, and trust. If diplomacy equals safety, then explain why a $100 million vessel is evaporating on camera. Stay focused, because this wasn't chaos. This was timing. Russian radar operators see clutter. Harbor defenses stay relaxed. Helicopter crews think they're chasing ghosts. Time remaining, 28 seconds. A small contact skims the waterline. Ignored, underestimated, mislabeled. Time to impact, 14 seconds. If Russia believes negotiations create a pause, then this explosion proves the opposite. While words floated in conference halls, Ukraine was already inside the harbor, already counting down, already writing the ending. For years, Russia sold Sevastopol as a fortress built from money and ego. Bastion P coastal batteries crouched along the cliffs like overfed guard dogs, each missile priced in the millions and marketed as a Black Sea no-go zone. Monolith B radar stared across the water with theatrical confidence, sweeping wide arcs, promising early warning, total awareness, absolute control. Above it all, Ka-27 helicopters orbited lazily, sonar dipping into the water like a bored fisherman's line. Crews convinced that anything hostile would announce itself loudly and die politely at range. This was the myth. Layered defense equals invincibility. Expensive sensors means safety. More metal means more control. Russian commanders believed Sevastopol wasn't just protected, it was solved. No surprise attacks, no cheap tricks, no embarrassing lessons. And that belief shaped behavior. Crews relaxed, procedures softened, alerts turned into background noise. When confidence gets this thick, it doesn't just blind you, it slows you down. But wait, here's the catch. The brochures never mention. A fortress that only expects missiles is helpless against questions. By 10:30 in the morning, Novokirkatsk isn't just another ship tied to a pier. It's a spreadsheet with a flag. A Ropucha-class landing ship costs well north of $100 million before you even load it, and this one is stuffed like a warehouse. Armored vehicles, artillery shells, fuel, spare parts, all stacked inside a steel box floating in plain sight. Every crate represents logistics. Every pallet represents months of planning. Every ton of ammunition represents confidence that no one would dare touch it here. This ship isn't parked for convenience. It's parked because Sevastopol is supposed to be safe. Because the Black Sea Fleet believes its defenses have turned this harbor into a vault. Lose the ship, and you don't just lose metal, you lose throughput. You lose the ability to move force along the coast. You lose weeks of future operations that now exist only on paper. But here is the genius detail most people miss. Ukraine doesn't see a ship, it sees a multiplier. One explosion here doesn't end a mission. It rewrites the balance sheet for the entire theater. Just after 10:30, the harbor doesn't feel under attack. It feels annoyed. Small, ugly shapes begin appearing on radar, slow, low, irregular, exactly the kind of clutter Russian operators are trained to dismiss. Cardboard-bodied Corvo PPDS drones wobble across the water like toys that escaped a hobby shop. Their signatures crude, their flight profiles almost insulting. Stay with me, because this is where intelligence beats horsepower. Ka-27 helicopters lift off. Rotors chopping the air with confidence, crews grinning as they fan out to hunt what looks like a budget prank. Sonar pings, machine guns bark, and one by one the decoys are shredded. High fives follow. Expensive ammunition deletes objects worth less than a used motorcycle. To the untrained eye, Russia is winning. But here is the lethal detail only sharp minds notice. Every helicopter that chases a cardboard ghost leaves a gap. Every radar operator tracking clutter isn't watching the waterline. Every Bastion crew focused outward forgets to look inward. Meanwhile, something else is moving quietly, patiently hugging the surface where radar reflections blur into waves. A Magura V5 doesn't rush. It learns. It maps response times, blind arcs, habits. This isn't an attack yet. It's reconnaissance wrapped in theater. Time remaining, under a minute. If you were commanding this harbor, would you celebrate cheap kills? Or notice that your defenses are being gently pulled apart, thread by thread, by machines that don't care about pride? A few minutes after 10:30, confidence has officially replaced caution. In Russian command rooms overlooking the harbor, the tone shifts from alert to bored amusement. Another decoy splashes into the water. Another cheap drone burns. Someone laughs. Someone reaches for coffee. The kill tally looks good, and the threat feels finished. This is where arrogance becomes operational. Helicopter crews linger too long, circling empty water, chasing validation instead of threats. Bastion operators relax their posture, convinced that anything dangerous would have announced itself louder, faster, more expensively. Radar screens glow with clutter and false reassurance, and no one asks the one question that matters: why nothing dangerous has tried to run. But wait, this is the mistake. Machines that rush are panicking. Machines that linger are learning. The Magura V5 is still there, low and forgettable, riding the noise floor like a rumor no one bothers to investigate. It watches reaction times stretch. It notices firing patterns repeat. It records which sectors go quiet when helicopters drift too far from their posts. Stay focused, because this is not a failure of technology. It's a failure of discipline. Russia believes it has defeated the attack. Ukraine knows the door is now open. The harbor doesn't feel threatened anymore, and that feeling is worth more than any missile ever fired. Just before 11 in the morning, the harbor makes one final fatal assumption: that the show is over. Helicopters peel away, fuel gauges dipping low. Crews convinced their workday has already earned applause. Radar operators downgrade alerts. The waterline becomes background noise again. Stay focused, because this is when the real weapon finally stops pretending. From the surface clutter, the Magura V5 accelerates not dramatically, not heroically, but with purpose. No radio chatter, no warning spike, just a narrow profile slicing through reflections and blind angles that were mapped minutes earlier. Time to impact: less than 30 seconds. Novokirkatsk looms ahead. Massive, idle, stuffed with explosives and parked broadside like a dare. The ship never maneuvers. It never reacts. By the time a lookout notices the wake, it's already too late to matter. Time remaining: 12 seconds. The Magura doesn't aim for armor, it aims for physics. It slams into the hull at the waterline, exactly where steel is thinnest and consequences are thickest. The initial blast punches inward, rupturing compartments packed with ammunition. A fraction of a heartbeat later, secondary detonations begin arguing with gravity itself. But wait, this isn't even the final insult. As fire races through the ship's insides, a Neptune cruise missile launched earlier, timed with surgical patience, arrives to finish a target that is already dying, ensuring there will be no salvage, no spin, no heroic damage control story to sell on evening news. Moments after the impact, physics takes full control and politics loses its voice. The initial breach at the waterline funnels the blast inward, forcing superheated gases into confined compartments where pressure has nowhere to escape. Steel flexes, then fails. Bulkheads designed to stop flooding become amplifiers for destruction. Inside Novokirkatsk, stored ammunition reaches its ignition threshold almost simultaneously. One detonation triggers the next in a brutal chain reaction: cause, effect, consequence. Each blast feeding heat and overpressure into the next compartment like a fuse burning through the ship's spine. The Monroe effect does its quiet, merciless work, focusing explosive energy into narrow jets that turn reinforced steel into liquid ribbons before they even realize they've been hit. Stay with me. This isn't a single explosion. It's a system collapse. Fuel flashes. Shockwaves ricochet through enclosed spaces, reflecting off steel walls and multiplying their force. The deck buckles upward, then tears open, venting fire, shrapnel, and cargo into the open air. What looked like a controlled burn seconds ago becomes an uncontrolled disassembly. From the outside, observers see a towering fireball. From the inside, there is no inside anymore. The ship isn't sinking yet, but it's already dead. Structural integrity has fallen below recovery limits. Damage control is mathematically impossible. At this point, the Black Sea Fleet isn't fighting fire. It's watching an asset convert itself into scrap at the speed of chemistry. By late morning, the smoke over Sevastopol tells a story accountants understand instantly. Ukraine spends a handful of cardboard decoys worth tens of thousands of dollars, a Magura V5 that barely cracks six figures, and one Neptune missile priced lower than a single Russian air defense interceptor. Call the total investment pocket change by military standards. Now flip the ledger. A Rapucha-class landing ship erased. Cargo destroyed before it ever reaches the front. Ammunition lost. Vehicles vaporized. Logistics schedules shattered. Conservatively, Russia loses hundreds of millions of dollars in hardware alone. Realistically, the damage creeps toward $1 billion once you count downtime, repairs, morale, and the quiet admission that Sevastopol is no longer safe. But here's the strategic checkmate. This wasn't about sinking a ship. It was about poisoning assumptions. Diplomacy didn't buy safety, expensive defenses didn't buy control, and brute force didn't buy awareness. Ukraine didn't outgun Russia, it outthought it, and did so at a return on investment Wall Street would envy. So now the question is yours. If you were planning the next move, would you keep funding old steel and louder missiles? Or would you bet on math, patience, and traps that make billion-dollar fleets blink first?